Good day everyone and welcome to another educational video. This is Mr. Stitt and today we are talking about how to grade an argument essay with the FSA Rubric. So when you get your essay back from Mr. Stitt, you're going to see three unique scores. I want you to really understand what these three scores represent. So let's get into the FSA Rubric and then I'll show you how I personally grade FSA essays. Here we go. First things that I want you to think about is a review. We've talked about this in the past, but I want you to look at the FSA argument rubric for a moment. What three areas are being graded and why? What three areas is Mr. Stitt looking for and the FSA graders looking for, and why are they looking for those things? So let's take a look. First thing I want you to notice is there's the three categories. These three categories are what the FSA graders and Mr. Stitt are looking for when we're looking at your essay. The first category is purpose, focus, and organization. The second category is evidence and elaboration. The last category is conventions of standard English. So in category 1, is your essay focused? Is it organized from start to finish? Does it have a purpose? Are you trying to argue a specific topic or are you trying to inform? You must be focused in your essay to get a high score. The high score would be 4, the low score would be 0 or 1. Now, evidence and elaboration. Do you use evidence from the texts that are provided for you? Do you pull from the text? Do you quote ideas that are mentioned there? Or do you just use your own thoughts and opinions? Elaboration, that's where you explain and you give detail about why the evidence is important and what the reader should think. So you can inject a little bit of your opinion here, but not too much. You want to really explain the evidence. Last but not least, conventions of standard English. Are you spelling things correctly? Are you using the correct punctuation, capitalization at the beginning of a sentence, periods at the end, good solid transition words? These you can only score 2, 1, or 0. So based on this rubric, you can get an overall score of a 10 on your FSA rubric. So make sure you know these specific categories before you take your test. Now, I want to take you through a student essay and I want to show you how Mr. Stitt would grade the essay. So let's read through it first and let's consider the purpose, focus, organization. Let's consider how the student used evidence and elaboration. Last, let's consider how the student spelled things correctly or didn't spell things correctly and the punctuation used. Here's the topic of the essay. Should people own property in space? So if we were to go to Mars, should people be allowed to own property there? Let's see what the student has to argue. So we know because of the word should, this is an argument. So here we go. I have always dreamed of living on another planet, but I never thought it would actually be possible in my lifetime. People are discussing whether or not to let people live on Mars and the Moon. And you should support the idea. People should be allowed to live on another planet because you can make a lot of money selling materials and stuff from Mars. The people selling the property will make a lot of money, so we can have resources, and it's more affordable than before. So this is the student's introduction. It's pretty strong. They've used a hook, like connecting to their own personal life. They've said, I've always dreamed of living on another planet. They've even talked to me about an overview of their main points. People should live on the planet because they can make a lot of money. They can sell property. But here's the one issue with this particular introduction. Is it focused on the topic? This person is talking about living on another planet, but the topic is supposed to be, should people own property in space? So those are two different topics that I'm going to have to really be mindful of as I go through her essay. Should people buy property on space, not should they live in space. So let's see if she maintains the focus. Let's go on to the next paragraph. If you have ever seen the moon rock in space or space dust, it is super cool looking and pretty pricey. According to source 4, there may be valuable minerals in these locations. This is saying that valuable minerals could be found on the moon and Mars and be sold for money. So again, use of great evidence here. She's quoted her source. She's even told me her point here. If you've ever seen a rock or mineral dust, it's super cool looking and pretty pricey. So she's getting at the point of colonizing in space, living in space, you can make money. But again, is she talking about living in space or is she talking about buying property in space? So again, the focus might be a little off. Also, I'd like more detail in this paragraph. So now we're starting to maybe take a hit on evidence and elaboration. But let's keep reading. If you have ever rented or seen a $2 million house, you know how nice it is. The host of your move needs to have money to build your house, supply you with air, and give you transportation, so they would need a lot of money to do so. Source 2 explains that Mars Space Colony includes a price tag of $500,000 per person. If a family of 4 were to move to Mars, it would cost Good morning, Swift Creek. If a family of 4 were to move to Mars, it would cost $2 million. It sounds like a lot of money, but it's Mars, and your host needs to supply you with air, water, and food. So again, the student did a great job here of quoting evidence from the source. In fact, source 2. They even introduced their point well. But again, I'm starting to see this student drift off topic. The topic is, should we buy property in space? Should humans be allowed to buy property in space? She's focusing more on the benefits of living in space, but not on buying property in space. So we have good evidence, good elaboration here, but we're still struggling with focus. Let's keep reading. My opponent might argue, so here the student is getting into the counterclaim. My opponent might argue that owning space property is nonsense. They might say this because it is unrealistic, and Source 1 and Source 3 make fun of the idea because they think it is so unrealistic. Source 1 says that, as the only authorized realtor for property on the red planet, I am pleased to make the first public offering. When they say this, it is implying that she is trying to be funny. Although my opponent's claim is strong, my claim is stronger because living on another planet is a real possibility and really cool. So this student did a great job of doing the counterclaim. They bring up the enemy's point of view and they also quote evidence to support the enemy's point of view. That's a very strong technique. Then they provide a solid counterclaim. Although my opponent's claims are strong, my claim is still stronger. But again, I'm losing the focus of buying property in space. She's talking about living in space, but we need to be more specific, buying property in space. Let's keep reading. Everybody is fascinated with space and its mysteries, but living in space is a whole different deal. Some might think living in space would cost millions and millions, but it's more affordable than you think. Source 2 says that Mars Space Colony includes a price tag of $500,000 per person. But if you think about it, it's really not that much. Let's move on to her conclusion. Your dream of living on another planet might become a reality, and with your support, we can reach space. We should be allowed to live in space because it's more affordable. You can make a ton of money living in space, so help us reach our goal of living on Mars and support our argument. Again, this student kind of did a pretty good job of wrapping up her main points. She could have stated them in more detail. She could have listed exactly what her main points were. So we're losing a little bit of that focus. And again, the student is talking about living in space, but the topic was buying property in space. I'm not sure if she ever truly addressed that specific point at all. So we're really going to probably take a hit in our grade when it comes to purpose, focus, and organization. But let's go back to the rubric. If I were to look at this rubric, I would probably score this student somewhere in the 2 or 1 category when it comes to focus. It's somewhat sustained on the task, related to the topic, but may show little or no awareness of the task, audience, and purpose. So that's where this student is taking a hit. Let's move down to evidence and elaboration. I would say this student scored a 4 or a 3 in this category. Definitely has adequate support. Evidence cited in support of the claim includes use of sources, facts, and details. The only thing that I would probably say bumps her down to a 3 is there's not a ton of explanation, detail, going above and beyond. How do these ideas apply to real life? So I would probably bump her down to a 3. So right now, focus, I'd probably say 2, evidence, 3, and I would give her a 2 on conventions because adequate command of conventions, may have a minor error here or there, adequate use of punctuation. So I would most likely score this essay a 2, 3, 2, which is a final score of a 7 out of 10. So where could she improve? She could definitely improve by staying more focused. She could even improve by giving more detail to the points. Why is buying property in space such an advantageous thing for humans? Things of this sort would definitely boost her grade. So now, here's what you're going to do as a class. You're going to now exchange papers with your peers. I'd like you to read your partner's paper, look at the rubric that's in front of you, and consider how would they score on all 3 categories. Don't forget to give them a score at the end: purpose, focus, organization, evidence and elaboration, and conventions.